Are we live now?
We are live now.
Okay. A very good afternoon and very warm welcome to ASCOCHEM's Masterclass on Strategic Human Resource Restructuring. Friends, as the competitive commercial environment deals with numerous disruptions and the organizations are required to make multiple adjustments. If the transformation or alteration of a company's structure is the call, improvising for economies of scale is the strategic agenda. Enhancing the scope for a business in the need of hour, then adoption of new approaches should not be secondary decision. This is especially with respect to restructuring deals that the human resource, which has to be the central to all agenda items, but often this component is left for consideration at a later stage. This normally costs to the entities in an abnormal manner. A well constructed plan can help in achieving business goals and objectives while effectively aligning with the organization resources.
Hello.
A lot of things are in buzz with respect to labor reforms. New labor codes are yet to be rolled out for implementation, and labor quality is one of the hot agenda topics of G20 under India's presidency.
Hello. Hello.
There is some interruption. Sorry. I was just mentioning that a lot of things are in buzz with respect to labor reforms. New labor codes are yet to be rolled out for implementation, and Labor 20 is one of the hot agenda topics of G20 under India's presidency. As such, a masterclass on this subject of strategic human resource restructuring, this aims at addressing on how do we make this easier, more constructive, and beneficial for the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, we have renowned faculty to discuss with you and answer to your questions on the subject. I take opportunity to introduce you to Mr. Anupam Malik. He is the member on board of Employees Provident Fund Organization EPFO. He has served as additional Labour Commissioner of Haryana State and has more than 34 years of service experience. He is known for the successfully handling of the industrial relations situation in the country, quasi-judicial functions, strategic HR restructuring, and typical litigations connected therewith he has handled. And we have another speaker for the day, Mr. Joravar Singh. He is CEO and Director of Olympus Management Consultancy Services. He has experience of over 30 years being engineer and HR professional and conducts training and development program on labor laws on related subjects of HR interest. Ladies and gentlemen, I take the first opportunity to invite and welcome Mr. Anupam Malik sir to please take over the mic and address to the audience. We look forward to be guided by you and as to how industry should behave, should learn, should practice in terms of the restructuring with regard to especially on human resource at their end. So over to you, and I welcome to you, sir, Mr. Anupam Malik ji.
Uh, Thank you, Santosh. Welcome, everybody. Greetings. I'm glad there's a different audience. People on strategic, the job of actually looking at such topics, action on the subject. I have been handling the subject for many years, and over the years, the need for strategic restructuring has been changing. The changing needs have emerged today in a very different form. It has, from some pure legal perspective, it has become a strategic need now. I will take you through my presentation and show you the various aspects which are necessary to be looked at. And how do you do it? Is it only the law? Is it wisdom? What is the costing? very important issues are going to be there. I think I'll have to, Santosh, please allow me to share it because there's some blocking there at the back. Please allow the sharing at the back end.
Sharing rights given to you.
Okay. Friends, kindly have a look at this presentation and focus on your own needs also. One sec. You see, basically, we have been talking about till now the law on retrenchment and closure or restructuring in a crisis to reduce liabilities. We've never thought about strategic restructuring. So the principal law governing the subject is the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. There is a misconception that the law doesn't help. Tell anybody, okay, you can retrench, not a problem, or you take the help, permission from the government if you have more than 100. Now, there is also a misunderstanding on the issue. But law is the best guide. Please keep this in your mind, and I'm going to focus on this. In the service sector, no permission is required at all. Why are you thinking? And they are daring, they're not bothered. They call it pink slip, layoff. Because no permission is required for any such action. You just have to intimate to the government. The Chapter 5B applies only on manufacturing units. Permission of the government is required for retrenchment and closure only if there are 100 or more workers. 300 in Haryana and some other states. We had amended the law. And in the IR code, it is already 300. So things are changing at a rapid pace, even in the law part. Now, less than 300, 100 or 300, whatever is the case in the respective states, the retrenchment and closure is very simple. Junior most worker in every category go first. Relevant only sections 25F, 25G and H. But when you have above 100 or 300 workers, what is the case be, an application has to be made giving the justification with supporting record that the requirement is genuine. The sections are 25N for retrenchment and 25O for layoff. Now, it is very interesting that case law, you see, governments have been, because of the politics, the governments have been very frugal in giving such permissions. But if you look at the judgments are too good. The courts are in favor of justification, reasoning. And if you have the reasoning, the courts permit you to close down. But then the punishment is going through the legal procedure. The court procedure is so grilling that sometimes you get harassed whether to do it that way or this way or put in a VRS. There are other things. I'm going to come to that. Now, if you have less, say MSME, more than 50 and less than 100, 25 double FA applies. You just have to intimate the government. That's all. Provision for unavoidable closures. Suppose there is a crash, there is a fire, there is a catastrophe. Unavoidable reasons. That also is very clear. You read this section in slow motion and you will understand that these sections, the provisions of law are seriously very simple. Now, how to plan and execute retrenchment and closure in a crisis to reduce liabilities? I'm trying to bring you online from the conventional thought process to the strategic thought process. So first you be very clear on the conventional methods of the, resorting to the law. That in a crisis, suppose you want to lay off, like in the case of lockdown, it was a layoff for 90 days. Thereafter, it was a deemed retrenchment. But then people were not reading the law, and of course, the government was also not clear on what kind of instructions they were giving. Imagine the Home Ministry issuing directions for payment of wages. That was a poor move, and the matter got raised in the Supreme Court, and the government did not have any answer. But then, if you follow the law, it is easy, it is simple. What is the exigency requiring drastic action like layoff, retrenchment, and closure permissible under the law? You have to be very clear. Do we have documentary proof and record to support the reasons? I said, I have a loss. I can't, there is no business. What do you do? Do we need the permission of the government before such actions? Means, are you less than 100 or 300 in the case may be? Or do you have workers more than that? What is the procedure to be followed if the permission of the government is not required? Even then, easier said than done, you have to comply with the law, intimating the government that we are going in for retrenchment or closure. If you don't intimate, the action is mala fide. The government can intervene in the matter. What is the procedure to be followed for seeking the permission of the government? Now, in the case you have more than 100 or 300, as the case may be, number of workers, then how do you seek the permission of the government for retrenchment and closure or layoff? What are the limitations and re-emerging liabilities? Now, it is easier said than more than the law. You need the strategy and the wisdom within. Whether offering a VRS is a better option, how and why? How do you compute the offering for a VRS? Suppose you say, okay, I'll get rid of it. In the case, I'll now come sharply on the limitations and the re-emerging liabilities. Issues and liabilities for transfer of undertaking. Now, I just touch upon that. That in the case of retrenchment, when a unit is going to rehire or reopen, then those who have been retrenched will have to be given the opportunity first before recruiting others from from the market. But in the case of VRS, I'll come to that in detail. You have a choice. I mean, if you've paid off, you don't need to recruit the same people again, unless there is a specific agreement to that effect. So, if you are sharp on the process, following the law, the rules provide for the format, you have intimated the government, you have reasons, you have explained them very well, there is no problem. But then the choice comes, why VRS or why retrenchment or closure? Issues and liabilities for transfer of undertaking. Now, there are various, as I said, reasons. Suppose I am selling a unit and there is a problem, there is a union. Or I am buying a unit and there is a problem and the workers say, no, you can't transfer me along with the, or you can't just transfer me, you give me a full and final. What is the law? When a manufacturing unit is taken over or sold out on a slump or otherwise, or through the process of law. See, sometimes the units are taken over, through, say, a default, and then a high court comes in and says, okay, the unit is taken over. Then the provisions of 25F of the Industrial Food Act applies. Read it very carefully. Law is very clear and very, very simple. That first thing is, the workers have to be paid off as if retrenched. As if, please note it. It is not a retrenchment. It is a discharge simpliciter. As if retrenched in accordance with the provisions of section 25F. But if the workers are to be retained by the new employer with the same conditions of service, then no such payment is to be made. You just have to intimate the workers. But here the law is that you have to give an offer to the workers that if somebody wants to take their full and final dues, they have the option. But if you do it just unilaterally and don't give the option, then the case law is against you. In the case of transfer of undertaking with assets and liabilities of the workers, you can't simply wish it away and transfer the workers along with their rights. You are bound to give the opportunity to the workers to take their full and final dues as per section 25F. And the paperwork has to be very carefully made out. What are the essentials of agreement to sell on this issue? You have to provide. In the agreement to sell, one has to be very careful to specify whether you are selling it with liabilities or without liabilities. What is the law if there is a strong union contesting the move? The union cannot. If you have followed the law, the union cannot. If you have given option for to the workers to take their full and final dues, the union cannot interfere. If your paperwork is defective, the union can go to the court. Is there a liability with the new employer or to re-employ the workers discharged by the old employer? No. Very clear. If the workers have been discharged, the liabilities they have been paid off as per section 25F. The new employer is not bound to re-employ the workers. So you have to see the strategic part of the deal, and this has to be specified in the agreement to sell. Viewers, please be very careful on this. If your paperwork is perfect, let me tell you, you are immune. The court will not touch the matter. What are the essentials of the paperwork to be done in each case? Your reasons for the move. You are not supposed to disclose the entire agreement to sell, but the reasons to sell. Is it a slump sale? Is it a strategic sale? Or is it a sale through the order of a court? Is a takeover? Is a case of a takeover? It has to be very specifically mentioned in the agreement to sell or the document, or we are more concerned with the notice to be given to the workers for the transfer of undertaking, and whether they are being offered to take their full and final dues, or they are being transferred along with the unit with their legal rights, continuity of service. This has to be very clearly specified in the notice. But then, when and how is VRS a better option? Now, a unit is going to be sold out and the unit is going to be taken away to a far off place. The workers will crib, they'll make noise, and there'll be undue disputes, conflict. When is it better? How is it better to give a VRS as a better option? You have to weigh the pros and cons. Are the workers technically qualified? Are they required? Retain them. Try to retain them. I have handled many cases like this. The employer, even if is shifting the unit after taking over, wants those workers on the roll, because it's not possible to run the unit without the technology part. Yes, the workers who are unskilled or semi-skilled, who are not very critical, good to pay them off. But once you have paid them off under 25F as if retrenched, or motivated them with some kind of ex gratia and told them to join at the new place, that is a separate matter. The strategy has to be made out. Why you are doing it? To fill up the blanks of the government or the notice to the workers for retrenchment, and why you are taking those workers, after their retrenchment or continuity with the new employer. These things have to be strategized as per the specific technical needs of the industry. You have to be very, very careful in this. Now, as HR restructuring is also required to adapt to requirement of business process engineering or to strengthen the skill sets. Suppose some process of the manufacturing process is gone. You don't need it. Suppose you have a problem with the electroplating, so you get rid of it. Or some forging unit has to be let off. You are going to outsource certain process. Introduction of a new process. Suppose you are introducing some new technology. Manpower has become old, unable to adapt to new skills. They are not qualified. I can tell you, a earth mover company which are facing a lot of problems, they for operating their CNC machines, they hired B.Tech instead of the old workers who were only metric plus ITI or diploma holders. They engaged B.Tech workers. Just imagine. That is business process re-engineering. Influence of notorious elements inside and outside to risk the process of training and change of business. Suppose the workers are ready to change, they are ready to learn. You have a young workforce, but you have a union which is notorious, or you have an outside element which is going to interfere and create problems. Then it is better to get rid of them. You need to get rid of them by a VRS or by notice of change in condition of service required under Section 9 of the ID Act can be given. The management has to assert itself. Skill mapping of workers and those who do not fit into the new framework will have to be shifted up, down, sideways, or out. Please note these words. The management has to assert itself for the change. Skill mapping of workers must be done, and those who do not fit into the new framework of change in technology and working in the re-engineering framework, they will have to be shifted up. Convert them into managers if has some management skills. Down, dump them into sideway, irrelevant, some different kind of jobs which are just not going to bother you. Sideways, down, sideways, or out. You must get rid of them. The business must go on. I'm trying to stress upon this. All these things, every slide at the back of your mind should be that the business must move on and must flourish, and you must be in profits. Anything which is impeding your profits must be out. We must move on. VRS is definitely an important tool. If arrangement is not possible, there's a price. There's a price for each person. A person who's a notorious also has a price. I cannot describe the names of those companies who have dealt with people with money. Just get lost. But remember, again, social dialogue. If your transparency is there, you talk to people, tell them the truth, tell them the problem, the workers will cooperate. But when there is dictatorship, trying to throw the people around, or you just trying to dictate terms, sorry, even a legal process will face a lot of problems. Legally correct process will also face a problem. And you keep on going to the courts, and then you keep on abusing the courts, having ill will that the courts are delaying. No, the courts are right. Social dialogue is very, very, very necessary. You must confide in the workers, tell them this is the problem. I'll come to VRS very specifically. How do you pay off people? I'll come to that. But social dialogue, you remember that the first point at the back of your mind should be that the organization must move on. It must technically progress, and there must be profits. How to do it? That we are dealing with. Social dialogue, you must remember. Introduction of new technologies in the business process. I've already touched upon this. New technology and new product line has to be brought into the business, and highly qualified and trained workers are required to as operators. Replace the all workers who are not competent, cannot be trained. Some people are not really qualified, but they have reached a certain age. Question is, new worker to be recruited with different qualification and terms and condition of service, opportunity of change of skill levels. What to do with the workers, existing workers? Does the law help in any manner? What is the human angle? Again, you have to go through an exercise of skill mapping and tell the workers that, see, you have reached a certain age. Now here you need to remember age, wage, stage. What age is the worker? Solution is the management has a skill mapping of workers, and those who do not fit into the framework will have to be shifted up, down, sideways, or out. VR is an important tool. Social dialogue is a master key. If a worker is, say, 55 years, they tell him to take VRS. He's a local. He says, how? Why? I will not take VRS. मैं तो पूरा हिसाब लेगा, मेरा 8 साल पड़ा है. Now if a person is from far place, say Bihar, coolly tell him, see, वो बोलेगा साहब पैसा और दिलवा दो, थोड़ा और पैसा दिलवा दो. That's you how you pay it off, pay the man off. Now there is a young man, he's qualified. Social dialogue will tell you that man, that young man also wants to progress, wants to move on. So politely tell him, see, you need to make your own career. You are from a different line. We are introducing new technologies. So you take your full and final. We are giving you a hefty VRS. Please take your money and go. They will go. But if there is a local or there is some union or there is some instigation, they will not. So you have to judge for yourself. As a director, as a manager, as a HR manager, you have to strategize. You have to make out strategies, what to do, how to do, when to do, with the help of social dialogue. Restructuring to address recurring industrial relations problem. Now, this is another issue. Interestingly, suppose there is a history of having problems because of bad policies, because of poor practices in IR, or some poor facilities, or some bad elements from outside. Can you give you a very common example? Empty brain devil's workshop. It's very common that maintenance people will create a problem. Where you having such a workforce sitting idle and doing nothing in the name of maintenance? Is it so important? Mind you, housekeeping and maintenance are two different things. Machine maintenance today is high technology and you can outsource it. Is there a problem from the maintenance department? Is there a problem? I will not name the company, but there were having problems with the weld shop. And what was the problem? The weld shop, I think there are hands being raised. Please note your questions and tell the host, and the host will put in questions at the end of this presentation. Now you have to look at it. The weld shop, why is there a problem? Why are the union leaders from the weld shop? The effluent treatment, there were gases being emitted and the exhaust system was not good. There were problems in the operations. The operations had problems with the workers. They were not being properly treated. Relievers were not being given. So there are problems which you have to address. You can't address industrial relations by simply throwing the people out. But if there are elements who are notorious, then you need to first address the problems and then deal with those people and do the strategic restructuring by getting rid of them, assessing the magnitude of the problem and the impact. And there is an external or extraneous reasons. Remedy the deficiency of management and especially communication and work environment. Solution through social dialogue. Talk to the people. The remedies, if the reasons are internal, dial individual or a group. Talk to them, solve their problem, and make sure you don't have any obstruction in the manufacturing process or the business process. The remedies, if the reasons are extraneous and external, what are the remedies? How do you get rid of the people? You have to make out social dialogue, social dialogue, social dialogue. I'll repeat again. And there is a price. Look for social connections, pay them off. Or else there are other methods also. In general, how to practically do it. Now let's water it down to a certain practical points, how to do it. First of all, wherever you want to do the HR restructuring, after considering the need for restructuring, which I have just described various aspects, whether it is re-engineering, whether it is technology introduction, whether it is merger or acquisition, or there is a higher problem, or there are other reasons which you have. Recently, there was a unit which was in a hilly area, where the subsidy was not being provided by the government, or the subsidy is very common in areas where the subsidy was being given by the government and now it is over. You have to cut down the production or you cut down the manpower there. So these are various reasons. of profitability and practical working, which you have to understand. And with those reasons in mind, conduct HR mapping, qualification, analysis of reasons for organized industrial relation problems, the choice of right remedy, extraneous and external causes. The external right choice of the remedy has to be commensurate, targeted, focused on whether the reasons are extraneous or external or it is internal. Listing out workers and opinion makers to support the plan of the management and also who would oppose it. Mapping also includes how many people in the social dialogue agreed with you and how many people are adamant and will oppose you and create a conflict situation. You have to prepare for that. Now, you have to, please note it, I have put it in bold. After the assessment, the reasons, the HR mapping, you have to strategically create a push factor in the unit and a pull factor outside the unit. Push factor is the insecurity that the unit is going down, it is going to close down, there will be retrenchment, the cut down, and a pull factor with the incentive to leave for the thinking of the workers. If you don't have a push factor, who's bothered about an incentive? If you don't have incentive, who's bothered about the push factor? They'll fight you in the court. Please remember this. I have highlighted it. You must create a push and a pull factor in the environment to motivate people to leave. Listing out shop floor managers who may be guiding the workers and transfer them out. Recently, there was a unit in Maharashtra where we were trying to close down the unit and shift the process to another location. The unit was originally owned by some other company and now taken over by another MNC. And he was trying to talk them out. When I read there, the first thing I observed was those workers and the managers were in a relationship for 28, 30 years. Can the managers now tell the workers to leave even with a hefty VRS? No. The workers are 50 plus age. The managers are 50 plus age. They say, let the damn thing go on for another 3, 4 years, 5 years. And the managers were misguiding the workers. Let me tell you my experience as a registrar trade union. More often than not, there is an element amongst the management who is creating a problem. So if you are a top level management or you are a HR manager, make your confidential notes of people who are going to, in the management, who are going to obstruct or motivate the workers against the decision of the management. You have to be very careful. You get into trouble. So this has to be a very, very confidential note. Look for managers who are not supporting you. Grapevine of the inevitable. Besides social dialogue, grapevine. This is going to happen, this is going to happen, that is going to happen, the unit is going to close down. The business is going to be shifted. We are expanding in some other area. A grapevine, a genuine story, looking good and genuine, must be circulated in advance to promote the social dialogue as a remedy. Announcement of the transfer, promotions, punishment posting. Now, there is another interesting thing. There are people high level. You have your standing orders. You can transfer anybody anywhere. Now, those people who do not leave, as I said, retrenchment, closure, VRS, push people up, promote them, put them into relevant, very poor jobs, derogatory jobs. But there is another beautiful option you have. Send them, transfer them to Assam, transfer them to north to south, south to north. There is something called a VRS. How do you promote? Push and pull factor, I repeat. the VRS will become a CRS. If your push and pull factors are effective, it will become a de novo ab initio CRS, compulsory retirement scheme. The workers will be too pleased to take the money and go away. But again, this is push and pull factor. So I said, you need to do the manpower analysis, manpower mapping. You have to create push, pull, and push factor. Just look at the managers who are going to support you, who are not going to support you, and of course, social dialogue. With all that analysis, your social dialogue is going to what is going to actually lead you to success.
Okay, bye.
Strategic HR restructuring for any purpose is possible with wisdom. Please do not abandon your wisdom. You have to be wise enough to make that plan in the manner I have just guided you. Strategy, and by addressing the sensitivities of the worker for success within the scope of law. Do not try to fiddle with the law. You must, you see, somewhere people are smart enough, they'll approach the courts, and you will be in trouble. Even if your action is put in the deep freeze for 3 months, 6 months, you are going to be in serious trouble. So you better ensure that whatever you are doing is within the bounds of law. Yes, that is where wisdom again comes in. The HR mapping, the age, the wage, the stage. Who are the people who can be promoted, who can be moved out, who can be paid off, who can be transferred out. And of course, social dialogue. Transparency, objectivity, and sensitivities. Social dialogue means talking to them in their language, address their sensitivities. What will happen? Suppose there is somebody who not in good shape financially. It is for the HR to help those workers find a new job. You are not victimizing people. Where will the law come in? If you are going to victimize them, anywhere if it is proved that you have victimized somebody, you are in neck deep in trouble. Your entire procedure, entire process was going to crash. Now, another factor which I experienced in the good old days of early 2000s, the American companies were very harsh, that cowboy methods. They're trotting in, acquire, take over, throw the people out, VRS. That was dangerous. People were poor, who had never seen a 1 lakh, they were getting 8 lakhs, 10 lakhs, way back in 2001, 2003. Now what happened? Those workers were on the road after taking that money. And that VRS got a very bad name. I told those employers, why can't you be more humane? Why are you trying to behave like an American? You're Indians. We have a very close-knit society. You cannot be insensitive. Tomorrow, somewhere, somebody challenges your action, and though you paid off people, and the court freezes your action for 3 months or 6 months in a legal process, I think you are going to be in trouble. Say, what do you mean? You have a better way of doing it. Say, how? Poor people who do not have an educated background, they are not financially educated. It is the job of the employer to financially educate those people on how to use that money, which they are going to get as a retrenchment compensation or as a VRS. Today, every employer is prepared to give a VRS. But how do you spend that money? It is also the responsibility of the management to bring in insurance people, bring in bankers, guide the workers, bring in social workers, bring in NGOs who guide them on education of their children. You have a lot of people, NGOs who guide on education, so that the worker will reserve some money for the education and the family. He will not waste the money. He'll invest on some assets. He'll invest on some workshop or some post-retirement occupation. Set up a small workshop or set up a small repair shop or whatever. The financial education of workers is a pull factor. But this is more than a pull factor. It is just not stories. It is a genuine, real, genuine, and most educated and most important part of the pull factor for the workers to take VRS or take their dues and settle down in life after voluntary retirement or just move on. Even if there is a young man who is taking a VRS, he should know where to invest that money and not waste it. So financial education is a very strong cornerstone, important part of social dialogue. Support and guidance for professional mobility of workers is another key to successes. The HR managers must guide the workers where they can get a new job in the same type of industry or a new industry or in a different area. I know a unit in Himachal where a good lot of people were absorbed in the industry in Himachal, and a good lot of people, say out of 150, 45 people joined in Maharashtra. Himachali joining in Maharashtra means very progressive. Why? Because they were technically qualified. The industry there needed them. Now, who will guide about the professional mobility of workers? This is also a very important technical part of social dialogue. You just can't talk sweet lollipops. The social dialogue has to be very technical and meaningful for the success of creating a pull factor for the people to take, leave. On one hand, I have explained the very technical reasons, the compulsions for which you need to restructure. I have also told you the very strong ifs and buts, the precautions, the internal conflicts at the manager level, the conflicts that may be possible with the workers, with the outsiders, or the insiders, and how to create a pull and push factor. The push factor obviously cannot be threatening. It has to be meaningful. It has to be technical. It has to be transparent. And the pull factor I have just explained is a social dialogue which essentially must consist of not only sweet lollipops or counseling, but also the technical part of financial education, support and guidance for professional mobility of workers for the success of the entire exercise. So it is easier said than done. Strategic HR restructuring to benefit from the advantages of new labor codes. Now, here is another very key area which I am only pointing out the highlights, addressing the void created by disallowed contract labor. Mr. Zorawar, my friend, is going to elaborate this in a more detailed way. No permission of the government is required in the IR code. Minimizing implications of equal remuneration clause. This is new gender. Deployment of women labor and night shift. Wage structure. These are another issues which are going to come in the new labor codes. Social security benefits. I think I have touched upon the strategic part on the basis of existing law, the wisdom which the management has to, the strategic part of the management, the technical issues, the business issues, and the wisdom part, and the HR, how they are going to plan and do it, the legal part, this social dialogue amongst all. And I leave upon here upon the subject for my friend Mr. Zorawar Singh to continue on the basis of the new wage code, labor codes. God bless India. Thank you very much. I think I covered a lot of topics in less time because I have to give some time to my friend here who has very important things for the coming it's not only the IR code, it is the strategy part which is reflected in the IR code, which is an eye opener for people now. Santosh, thank you. I think
We may have a few questions, maybe
yes,
after
we can take
the
it right away.
officers. Yeah.
We can take right away.
Uh, maybe have any questions from audience if they have any
A lot
questions.
of
They may please.
hands were being raised in between. Welcome.
Mr. Arvind Rathi,
Yes, tell me.
Team IT, can we have Mr. Arvind Rathi's question? If you can allow their voice. Yeah, Mr. Rathi, please take your question. I think he raised hand. Yeah, Mr. Rathi, please. Mr. Rathi, unable to have your voice. Can you write question in the
Yes,
chat box? Because
but
Now
at this
Ram,
moment, yeah,
it's
it's fine.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, now it's a little bit clear.
Yes, tell me.
Yes, now it's little bit clear.
Tell me.
There is no question from my side at this moment.
Okay, in case if you have any question, we may ask the audience to please type your question in the chat box and we may take your question to the respective faculty. By the way, sir, before Jaravar sir takes over, uh, most of the things which you beautifully covered, they are very, very relevant. And to my understanding, you covered things with regard to age, wage, stage, VRS, CRS, social dialogue. They are very, very relevant, sir. They are first time that I could learn through. And foremost important, financial education you talked about, mobility of the workers you talked about. And now coming to one question to my mind, now the things are changing with regard to especially the service sector, because there are the restructuring. We as ASSOCHAM, we have our members who belong to service industry as well, and the models in the service industry are changing very fast. Like they are going for the hybrid model, GIG working workers they are being allowed, and in the service sector like fintech, healthcare, cybersecurity, logistics, likewise
Yes.
in several other service sector industry. What are your views in that particular context with regard to the HR restructuring? We have been learning through the things with regard to we talk about moonlighting, then we are listening about the sunlighting. So in those particular scenario, typically, how do you consider that HR restructuring can be different from the perspective of the service industry?
Yes, a beautiful question you posed. I simply ran through the service industry, didn't give details, but let me highlight the need there. In the service industry, the business analysis has to be much more strong than in the manufacturing industry. Because in the manufacturing industry, the job classification is very, very strong. But in the service industry, the interconnectivity or the business process is so strongly interconnected that you have to be very clear about the skill sets which you want, which you don't want, or you want them to be online, regular, or you don't want them to be like I join hands with join my issues with the TCS people or the Infosys people especially. First of all, there are confidentiality issues. There is value chain analysis. What is the per hour output of a person on the job of work from home, or do we need, if there's somebody moonlighting, either you are not putting him at the giving him the proper input, the amount of work he should be given, or he is having more energies which you are not utilizing and he is able to utilize somewhere else. Simply saying yes or no to moonlighting, I think that's a poor way of doing it. Very strong analysis of skills and structure and value chain analysis is required in the service sector because the lines are very thin. I say hotel sector, hospitality. Now there is a very good waiter. Let us start at the bottom. There is a waiter and he serves very well, but his requirement is at home is of more money and he's very energetic. He'll definitely in the night shift or the alternate shift, he's going to work somewhere else. Talk about hospitals, health sector. Somebody is working somewhere and has the energy enough to, very difficult actually in the health sector because it's very exhausting. But then there are people who are going to work out somewhere else. The most critical is the IT. IT is a very, very hazy thing, and the multiple factors which come in are about loyalties, confidentiality, secrecy, and the companies are having another issue that they are giving inputs for the development of their workforce. Why would they like a person who is being trained on job for higher positions to work somewhere else? It is an investment of the company, but being utilized by somebody else. Is it not bad? But again, the analysis, the work analysis, the value chain analysis is a very necessary part. I would not like to simply say yes or no to moonlighting. It is very naive, very vague. We need to be very analytical and then put your foot down that this is the rule of the company, no moonlighting, or this is the average required, and then I'm going to pay you for hours of work, not on salary. Suppose I have a good work analysis and there's an amount of work, so you have artificial intelligence doing it. The number of hours you are putting in, you get that kind of money. There is an answer to moonlighting. Artificial intelligence is here. You just, even on the worker side, the employee side, you can't just have moonlighting as a moonlighting. You're not going for fling of a romance somewhere. Artificial intelligence is going to put you down. Don't play games with the company. It is here, already there. Nobody is talking about it, but let me tell you, it's already there. The IT people are smart enough. This is going to be brought down in black and white. But as I said, more than the manufacturing sector, where the physical obstruction and conflict resolution and other factors are more important because the qualification level is low. In the service sector, the skill analysis, the value chain analysis of the job process, the working process is very necessary, and then only a decision can be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your very knowledgeable answer to the participant over here. I could get your idea that how the service sector should deal in such situations. And now I would move on to invite Mr. Joravar Singh Sahab to please take over your session. And let me take opportunity of inviting you henceforth. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ji, for having me here. I was told that I have to critically comment on the presentation of Mr. Malik, and he has.
No, make your own presentation more important. Not
and
you have
covered
more
almost
important issues there.
He's
Futuristic
covered
issues
almost
you've got.
everything regarding restructuring because his job in the Labor Department was primarily to support the restructuring technically, legally on the HR perspective side. Please give me rights to share my presentation.
Ravar is futuristic.
I'm looking for my, please allow me to share the presentation part, my file rights.
Team IT to please give the rights.
You got it?
You have the rights.
Yes, yes. Unable to share. Is it there? Okay. Is my slide
Yes, yes,
visible?
we can see your PPT, sir.
All right, all right, all right. So, two parts. One, you raised this IT sector question initially, in the end, because it seems to have been covered less. Interestingly, before coming for this webinar, I had another client call from who was also from the IT sector. And the person also told me similar question that these new labor codes, it are more like from manufacturing mindset. I said, how do you know? He says, we have an association of ITs companies. And we recently had a meeting and everybody was of the view that the new labor codes are in fact more meant for manufacturing, not for us. They are not suited for us. We don't know how we will be complying with them. So we need to really restructure ourselves according to that. So let me tell you that this restructuring need is going to be much higher in ITES vis-a-vis manufacturing, or maybe equal. Let's not put one over the other. Let me first finish off the IT sector thing which you started. Let me answer that. The how IT sector is different from manufacturing is I had spent quite a good time of my HR profession as a director HR with manufacturing as well as an IT sector, and I started my own setup only post my stint with the ITES sector. So difference which I find between two is that one, the IT sector works on taking manpower as a variable cost, not as a fixed cost. They allocate manpower to each project and then consider it to be a variable. Variable means it's a disposable kind of a thing. Moment project goes, manpower has to be reallocated and has to go. That's why there's a pink slip culture, which is in stark contrast to the manufacturing practice where person is supposed to resign at age of 58 according to standing orders, because service sector doesn't know of standing orders. Second thing is the in the manufacturing I have my conveyors, a process layout, a machinery, and if I want to change my product line, it is a massive affair. In IT sector, suppose I want to change my process from developing iOS apps to say website development. It's the same laptop. You next Monday you say okay, we install the software and we are ready. So IT sector restructuring is more of a serious thing because the organization itself, infrastructure itself can change overnight and say, okay, tomorrow morning we start this. In manufacturing, the HR will still get a time of 6 months, 1 year before we order new machinery, replace the old processes, change things. So we have more time doing the restructuring from the HR perspective. Third, the most important point is that in HR, in manufacturing, the supervisor and worker, they interact on daily basis. They see each other, they are talking to each other, they are seeing the processes. In IT, most of the workers, they work remotely. Most of the employees, they work remotely and are target driven and were talking to their computers only and the computer timesheets and the project sheets, not to the supervisor. The so-called social dialogue or one-to-one interaction only happens in the company parties in weekend, which HR sometimes forces them to have, or a department or company celebration events or something like that, which everybody knows it's a celebration event to hive off, but it doesn't replace a social dialogue. So starting with my today's comments on this presentation of restructuring, though we started, though I put closures also, though you said mergers and acquisitions, and I am saying I am also adding something else, modifying the processes which have now we are seeing recently more and more companies post COVID are restructuring themselves because they have realized some redundant processes in the system, some redundant manpower in the system. For example, even in my company, I have certain around 800 people in Delhi itself, and I had a full-fledged office in Delhi for handling their HR grievances. During COVID post that, I asked my people there, what are you doing? Say, sir, working from home. How are you taking care of people, sir, working from home? I said, then they can work from Chandigarh. What do you mean working from home? So why I need to have a Delhi office? So I shut down my Delhi office and all the staff there because my Chandigarh office can take care of it. That was one part. So some technology changes happening, and so I am also putting this kind of new learnings which we had during shutdown period as a part of strategic restructuring. A very interesting part, when I did my MBA, they in one of the subjects they said that they taught us that before starting a business or during the initial phases of business, you should also have a exit strategy of business. All right, what is the exit strategy of business? You are too pessimistic, Mr. Zorawar. We are starting a new business. It is going to unicorn. You are talking of exit strategy. Then I said, no, they also taught me you should also calculate the cost of closure. Say, who is closing? Why are you calculating the cost of closure? So, in fact, what we are trying to say is that some of the ideas which I wanted to implement in the starting phase of HR wants to implement in the starting phase of organization may or may not get implemented. For example, I wanted to, during the startup phase of my organization, I wanted to have this retirement age of 50 years put in my standing orders. But since I was too pessimistic of thinking about what will happen later when I have a problem in business, I was told, no, no, keep it standard as 58 years. So I'm just giving a hint that where the restructuring has to begin and when. It has to begin in the beginning itself. Now we are sitting on a very opportunistic timeline with the new labor codes coming, which I was told to touch upon. And this restructuring, closure, merger, acquisitions, normally we think of one act, which is called the Industrial Dispute Act. And Mr. Malik has given several sections out of Industrial Dispute Act. But it is not the only act which covers, which takes care of it. We have something called Trade Union Act, because he talked about unions also, which we missed. We have Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act, which also talks about giving notice, how you have to handle people, whether they can be transferred, not transferred, what is change in service condition. Luckily, the new IR code has subsumed all this act into a single enactment. So that is a good part for us, that we now have a single enactment to look at it. Question is that why actually are what are the challenges before mergers and acquisitions? Why do we actually need it? Well, it's a right of employer to retrench surplus labor, and it's by inherent business right to do a business, that I need to do it the way I want to do it and how I want to do it. And I have full right to discharge my surplus labor. But sometimes your rights are not absolute. You have to protect the right of other people also, your workmen also. So hence comes the conditions which are there. And more effective the HR is, I was just discussing, more you need to prepare for restructuring. What do we mean by effective HR? If I remember those initial days of HR, I was told that main role of HR is HR engagement. The rest all are, outsourceable things. So that means we have to cling the employees, make them loyal to the organization, make them feel that they can never leave. And now we are talking of restructuring, where we want to disengage with them and tell them, no, what HR was doing with you is actually a bad strategy. A CS or a management wants that this has to be, delineated. This unit has to be delineated. You have been making all the people engaged to it. That is one part. Second, HR is, as rightly pointed out, and we all who are in the management top level, we know that HR is the last one to know when the company is in fact going for a merger or acquisition. It is kept away till that time thinking that he is a people person, he is engaging people, while he is the person who should have been knowing it at the first instance, so that he start building up the disengagement exercise and pushing and pulling, as Mr. Malik had said. So we know by now, we already know that how we can take care of surplus labor. Obviously, we can lay off permanently by retrenchment, or we can just close the undertaking. But we also need to introspect. When do we reach at that stage where we start thinking that we have to close or retrench or go away? Is it because there are certain disputes which are happening in the system, that, or the cost is because of that dispute, there's a cost which is going high, or that HR has been so good that every year they are giving, during collective bargaining and agreement with unions, they're giving hefty 35% raise, and that now my workers are at a salary of say 1,95,000 rupees a month, vis-a-vis a contract labor doing similar job is available to me at 15,000 per month. This is also scenario at most of the companies now, where own workers, because of the very effective HR engagements, they are at a very high salary, which are not realistic. And to still keep the unit viable, they are depending on low cost contract labor, which unfortunately the new codes have done away with. This says you cannot have a contract labor in the core functions. So there are two implications into that. We'll come to that in my next slide. So before that, we say why restructuring and thinking about restructuring is important for the HR is one that you'll suddenly know. So you have to be prepared even when you don't know, because when suddenly you'll come to know, they'll say, okay, overnight you change the mindset of people. Overnight you make them go. Overnight you see that they don't create any problem. So we have to be ready all along. I have actually done this because I never had been a conformist to the regular routine industry segment. I have been experimenting since my day one in the HR line. The status quo cannot exist. We all know that when it is a unit or a cycle, if you stop pedaling, you'll fall. Unit is like an ECG report. It has to go up, down. If it is a flat line, we cannot survive. So at least HR should look at value addition per employee divided by salary cost. This ratio to be maintained. How? I'll give you a very interesting example of a call center where we hire callers who are freshers in the range of 12,000, 15,000, who have to do a calling, and they are delivering a certain set of deliverables. Every year they get an increment, and same callers doing same deliverables are also there at cost of 25,000 to 30,000. So the ratio is different in both cases. The ratio is very high in initial joining people, and the ratio is goes lower as people progress. So in a manufacturing kind of setup where there will be union or agreements, so it will be always difficult for HR to maintain this ratio. Though in call center, as Mr. Malik said, there is no Chapter 5B available. You can go and give the pink slips. There are no rules applicable. But things are going to change very soon with the new codes. All the laws will start applying. So in this call center, what I did was that I built a system where I said, okay, first year you get a 30% increase. Second year, you get a 15% increase. Third year, you get a 7.5% increase. And every year you get 50% of what you are getting increased in the last year, and made an automatic system so that people after third year, when their cost is, this ratio is really disturbing for the company, they also get demotivated and disengaged. Now this is not very HR kind of a thing to do, but then this is HR structuring pre-planned. You can see how many HR people will really endorse this idea. They'll say, no, this is not engaging employees. This is not real HR. It is real HR is we first make them go to a higher salary and then take them to a place where they cannot get a job in a similar salary range outside, and then at that time tell them, okay, you can now leave, I have changed. So which one is better? My system or the way my HR colleagues thinks. So again, Mr. Malik has in his presentation, I just picked out certain words. Automatic system of promoting, vertical or lateral. So to keep the above ratio in control, we can keep promoting people to the next level of assignment so that they keep adding the value till the time they are able to do it, or they are promoted to a level of inefficiency, which is also a psychological game. So it's called highballing. So we promote them to either deliver or to render them inefficient at that position where they're automatically pushed out of the system. Or lateral means, lateral doesn't mean later in the organization. Lateral means that we also tell them that besides being a, for example, take a simple example of call center executive. So while being a call center executive, uh, they can also look at, or for example, I had certain technicians, maintenance technicians on my roles. So I told them they can have a side business. They can also learn financial management. They can also do part-time insurance, so that if they have to, whenever I have to change or close or restructure, it is easy for them to go out and they are mentally prepared to embrace the change or exit. For example, in this was for service sector. In manufacturing, also sometimes we suddenly need to change. I was in one of the unit which was into PCB assemblies, and we had lots of workers doing, hundreds of workers doing insertion manually, and suddenly management bought automatic insertion machines, and they said these are unskilled workers. They were doing insertion manually. Now we have machines. What do you do? Again, that's a bigger question, that any process can change overnight. So restructuring, we have to be ready all the time. However, our HR, we also have something called training department in our HR. And the trainings, under ISO and other things, they are time management training, development trainings. I believe that the training should be renamed to skill alignment. Skill alignment means that we should have minimum redundancy. So I, in that company, was doing skill alignment. So beside insertion, I was also teaching them soldering of components, sorting, testing, and other things. So moment those people got redundant, I had approximately 50% absorbed in other things in the same organization. Interestingly, in the G20 agenda this year, one of the 4 points which has been listed by our Minister for Labor is skill gap mapping and opportunity for lifelong learning. What do we mean by lifelong learning? Lifelong learning simply means that we should be training them for the change at all the points so that they are able to embrace the change. Then we are talking of collective bargaining. As I've already discussed before, that collective bargaining should be a genuine collective bargaining, not what our HR may have been doing by increasing unrealistic salaries and taking a unit to a place where we need to restructure or unviable or consolidate kind of thing. Now, the new codes have raised this limit from 100 to 300. So we have been given a flexibility. And we can now flexibly remove the underproducing people. But how collective bargaining has shaped the future of industries is a very interesting question which I have posed here. Is that the collective bargaining has made people cling unnecessarily and given them benefits to the tune which were not commensurate with their value addition. Hence, the units were getting unviable. So they have to work out strategies to consolidate, close. So when we are talking of tripartite collective bargaining with our people, or HR's role in talking to employees, so we have to be very genuine, aligned with the business, so that we know that we are not doing anything which will make my business unviable, or where we have to cut a part of it. Let me summarize how we have to make a dish which we are talking about. So we have to put some preservatives, as you know, to increase the shelf life of our organization. As I could understand from Mr. Malik's presentation, In IR, we have to keep mapping the reason. So we have complaints, we have HR department helpline, we have people coming to us. So we have to check what are the reasons they are coming, what are the problems they are facing. Are they internal problems or created by external people? External means it could be external above their pay grade, above their ranks, like by supervisors, managers, or outside union or outside interested parties. And what is the reason behind it? So HR has to constantly, even if they're doing very well, keep mapping these reasons. Then we also need to have create a MIS. I don't think many people do. They have a MIS, which means a raw data of employees. But we should also have a MIS that these are conformist or positive supporters, and these are rebellious, anti-establishment or resistance creators. If we have this list ready with us, we know which all to cater to during the first phase, and which we have to be cautious of at that phase. Then I also could get it that pushing to insecurity and pulling out with incentives. Pushing to insecurity means when I was reducing their increment rates, I was pushing them to insecurity. Pulling out with incentives, I was training them how they can make more money using investing into mutual funds or selling insurance policies. So I was also pulling them out with incentives. In one of the units, I was training these people. It was a shoe manufacturing unit, how they can do work from home and do a contract manufacturing at their home. So the good workers, they started taking resignation, started forming their own SME units. 4 or 5 workers come together, then used to uh, take the material out, deliver it back. So I was able to reduce the manpower in that particular unit by 50% without reducing the output of the unit, by outsourcing small amounts to people who became small units of self contractors. A team of 8 to 10, number of teams of 8 to 10 who could take, like in a BD cigarette rolling industry, who could take out work and do it. And like more like in IT industry, where we say now that they take out work from home, and a set of team, they develop a particular website about, so that there is no question of moonlighting. Then I just remember moonlighting being discussed. Moonlighting was already there in other industry also. For example, we have seen guarding companies guard doing a 8-hour duty at one place and coming for another 8-hour duty at another place. That's also kind of moonlighting, and is a hazard as equal to what it could be in IT industry, except that in IT your intellectual property is also at threat. Then we should also look at, when we are looking at IR, we are putting preservatives in the system. We are looking at conspiracy theorists in our organization, people who come up with theories every now and then and create a funny grapevines, so that everybody says, "Oh, person, why to come in the limelight in wrong or right ways." So we should look for these people and check out. Most of these people have identity crisis. They want to be recognized. So why not recognize them before they create funny stories and we get noticed and get noticed by us? Instead, we go over to them, create their identity, promote, give them some creative roles, take them out of the system where they create a new kind of blogs or the stories. In happy days, when HR is all doing well, we forget sometimes to even draft simple notices of punishment, charge sheet, transfers, and we don't do transfers. So when suddenly a merger acquisition comes, we say, okay, either you go to the new company, or we'll forcibly transfer you to another unit. But then HR by that time has forgotten how to issue transfer orders, because they have never in life issued a transfer order, not in last 3 to 5 years. And worker has all the opportunity to say that they never transfer. They are today transferring because they want to do a merger or acquisition, and they are sending us out as a way of punishment. So IR machinery should be kept oiled. The transfers, some 1 or 2 odd transfers should be keep taking place. We should have some charge sheets being issued. File moti kahin kahin honi chahiye, so that we are not, we suddenly we say, oh, we never had transfers. And all the all the smaller issues are by that time thrashed out when the real big issue comes. So like somebody will come and say, oh sir, you have issued a transfer. Is that in standing orders? Is there a clause in standing orders to do that? I will say, oh, I suddenly realized here, this clause has to be put. So we put that in standing orders. So then when the bigger picture comes, we have everything ready, in place, tested before, thought out before, so that we are sure of it happening. Now, in core area, the contract labor is being prohibited, but at the same time, there is an opportunity called fixed term contract, which is being given to us in new codes. Fixed term contract people, when they go out, it's not a retrenchment. We don't need to pay them anything. Only is that they are on equal footing for gratuity and bonus. And nobody can be employed in core business. But there is a bigger catch in it, which is called equal remuneration catch. Now, when our CM of Punjab, he came, he says, oh, somebody guided him, oh, let's put everybody on fixed term contract with the government job. He said, I'll give everybody a government job, nobody on contract labor. Why? Because somebody told him that there's a contractor margin of 5%. And anyways, we are paying. So you'll say 5%, let's pay them. Where's the problem? Let's put them on fixed term contract. So he put couple of teachers, around 14,000 people on fixed term. And they said these people for first 3 years will only get basic. The allowances will come later. Now, it was very easy because that's what they were doing. The basic was around DC rate only. So they were very happy about it. But then these people said, oh, sir, wait, let's tell you something more about Equal Remuneration Act, which is now becoming a law. They went to High Court, and High Court's now recently 1 week or 15 days back said nothing doing. How can you have two laws for same set of people? They are eligible for everything. This happened in judicial officer's case also recently. Haryana judicial officer or Punjab judicial officer's case also. So now look, simple looking thing that, okay, let's convert them to fixed term overnight became a complex issue, because now who will foot their bill? Now these people who were on contractor roles at 18,000 will suddenly get at 36,000. And that calculation has gone haywire. And believe me, those who are still sitting on the new codes and thinking that they will not come, or maybe come during, maybe there is an election year, Modi will not experiment, maybe taking a very high risk, thinking that, okay, when it comes the next day, we'll issue them fixed term contracts. Will it be that easy? We need to really look at that restructuring part very closely. Now, equal remuneration, let me give you a more on it from the other side. It says equal work for similar nature of work. Now, the same company which I was quoting earlier, which gave its own employee for operating machine 95,000 per month, and contractor employee 20,000 per month for operating the same machine, it had a very novel idea. It says, okay, we don't employ our own workers on overtime. We ask them to leave after 8 hours so that they keep getting 95,000. But to match the cost, we put our workers on 12-hour shift. Now, with this new amendment and new codes, FTC says that they have to get an equal chance in doing overtime also. So now imagine this 95,000 salary worker comes and says, okay, give me equal chance for overtime. I am willing to work 4 more hours at a rate of 95,000 into 2, 1,90,000 category. So pay me overtime at that rate. I am willing to work for 4 more hours. So see what kind of fix you will be running into. So it is a very, very cautious thing, and we need to sit and think about it. And that's why most of the companies are restructuring. And I personally believe that there's lots of IT companies and ITS companies, you must be seeing that they're shedding off people, lowering people, taking care of outsourced third-party people, letting them go. Because perhaps they also know, and we should also know, that under new codes, the IT ITS sector also get covered under standing orders, and third party employees will also be the principal employer will also become employer for them. And since the employee means both own employee and contractors employee, we also need to see whether these contractors employee, who are also now my employees jointly, can they form their own union also in my organization? This is again a bigger question which we need to see. And the unions are already in offing. We have fight.org.in for ITS sector, and they are there to help you restructure in their own way or stop you from restructuring. We have to be really, think about it. Now, I had one client, which is a bank. He says, "Okay, I agree with you. Let me get your standing orders done. Let me get my standing orders. If you say standing orders are necessary," I said, "Okay, sir, you can go and have the standing orders. Get 5 representatives of workers." He says, "How do I get them?" I said, "Oh, get a voting in your organization, get them elected." He says, "Yeah, are you trying to ask me to create a employee union in my bank so that I can certify the standing orders?" I said, "No, that is the process. Now, please, ITS, beware. This is the process. You have to get 5 people elected, and they have to see what your HR policy is. They have to give their comment on it. If they like it or not like it, they have to share at the third party table, maybe sometimes in camera, sometimes in private. And then you have to jointly sign a HR policy, which may have been lopsided in many cases. To sum it up, layoff, I'll touch layoff also, which Mr. Malik said. It's a very simple. You have to pay 50% of basic wage as compensation for the period you don't have work, or you tell people that I don't have work, so I am being reallocating the unit to somebody else. And there is also a clause that on 45 days or up to 45 days you need to pay. Beyond that, you need not pay, but provided it is there in your documentation and standing orders or appointment letters, and it is all in order. This is also adjustable against retrenchment compensation, we know. And if if the worker accepts alternate employment, then need not pay. Strike and slow down, need not pay. For every retrenchment under the new codes, you have to send an intimation at least, not take permission up to 300, but intimation is required. There's additional cost also in the new code. Now, can employee withhold consent to transfer to a new employer, and what can be position related to a contract worker? That's very interesting. Sometimes some organization we see, they change the contract altogether. You say, okay, this year we had group 4, now we take another security agency. And to me, it appears that is also transfer of undertaking, where one contractor in your undertaking had 100 people, which are being handed over to the next contractor. And Supreme Court has already ruled on it, that it requires consent of employee before joining. So all the transfer of undertaking principle even applies in the contractor worker, where you have to give an option of giving, gratuity and full and final if they want to leave, or sometimes you have to give them assurance of continuity of service when they go to new employer. And one of the units which Mr. Malik was talking about in Baddi, they sold their unit to some other vendor, the vendor who was doing outsourcing there. They said, okay, why don't you take up? And employees were very jittery, because the main company can afford to give you retrenchment compensation, gratuity, and all other things. But a small contractor, once you transfer the unit to the smaller contractor, he'll say, okay, I am bankrupt, you can't take anything from me. So that right of workers needs to be preserved ethically also. We have to keep in mind, otherwise High Court and Supreme Court will have enough reasons to put you down, and whatsoever we have earned in the unit will lose away in the process. Transfer of undertaking, we have to also look at individual contract of employment and collective bargaining agreements. So it is best that if we get a tripartite agreement from individual, or we have a union who signs a tripartite agreement with both old and new, so that interest of employees is maintained. And the secret part of recipe is social dialogue. He says its social dialogue is not only with workers, it is also with supervisors and managers. Meticulously drafted legal notices. It is like a mathematics. One step in solving the equation is gone, then the entire solution will not be arrived at. The procedure has to be followed without deviation. And every step has to be controlled. We should have a timing of every step. For example, we should know when to ask for permission for retrenchment. Normally in my company to my client, I suggest do it on 5th or 7th of December. because at that time dark load is so much. You have returns under Festival Act, you have renewal of factory licenses, you have renewal of Shop Act, that your application is most probably going to be mishandled or misplaced, and most of the staff is going for annual year end leave, quota expiry kind of thing. So you may have a very high chance of getting a deemed permission after 60 days. So I'm just thinking of ways. It's not a way, but it could be a way if we are strategic, because that is what strategy is all about. Now that was all technical. We also touched about VRS. VRS is simply we are paying more. Why? When law is asking us to pay just 15 days, why we are paying more in VRS? We are paying more in VRS so that we are in control of situation. We are bypassing the unpredictability of courts, of people who interpret laws. Plus, once a VRS is offered, the person's right to be re-employed even after taking retrenchment, that also ceases. So it is a better way. If we have the new company is coming, it is coming with a different technology, is taking over older unit. It's better that it hires its own relevant set of people now. And we also need a skilled negotiator. The HR should be a very skilled negotiator who is at the site, who who creates a win-win-win settlement, win-win-win for the employee, the new employer, the old employer. Everybody wins in the process and sees, oh, we won by doing it. And HR department sudden role switch that I already told, from engagement to de-engagement, and after taking over by new company to again re-engagement. So switching of roles should be very fast, from sending out people to hiring again for the new employer. So being a placement agency, making your company a campus for campus placement, and then going to campus placement for hiring new people. So HR should be flexible in switching the roles very fast. That's all, but that's from my side. If you have got it all right, we are all ready to cook our merger and acquisitions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful thoughts sharing with us and the participants. We could learn a lot of things, including the skill mapping, lifelong learning, remuneration, equal remuneration, retrenchment, moonlighting, collective bargaining. You have enriched all of us, and indeed, it's a great learning session, and we look forward that this subject requires a lot of such session to keep on a similar way going forward. Just a few things, though the participants have mentioned certain questions, and a few questions may be here for your reference, may not be directly pertaining to the restructuring, but of course, since you are the expert on those subjects of related to HR matters, you have dealt and with large number of the organizations, having a lot of work experience with engaging with the industry. A few things come onto my mind with regard to human resource. Just I share with you a few thoughts around how whether there is balancing situation in the public sector, in the private sector, in the government sector, or purely the private sector or semi-government. Likewise, that uh, for example, a judge in the court can draw the salary and do simultaneously the renting business. That's the fact. And at the same time, the companies can throw out employees in the name of moonlighting in masses. Another situation, uh, in a typical private sector organization, the contract between employer and employee, normally that may be the case where the agreement has been in understanding that the employee cannot do any, anything or create anything which may be of like intellectual property nature, and if he does so or she does so, then it could be the property of the organization. But at the same time, have seen that bureaucrats, they keep on writing nice article books, they author do authorship of those such articles, and then they publicize fascinating work, and the socio-economic industry or the sector that got impacted, and the learning from thereafter. So this is entirely the different situation. At the same time, why there are two different set of standards are applicable, how long it may take the things to change, and then there may be the situation when the due to socio-economic biasness or maybe fear, the employers do not permit the employees to speak anything about socio-economic aspects to the employees, even if the thoughts can be of so much beneficial to the society and the economy. But maybe due to political fear or maybe biasness of the employer, employees can't speak anything. And then there are the concept of the third party checkers who do evaluate the employees past track record, and in several instances the checks of the ethics of these third party checkers is in question. So, how you may like to enlighten us on these few points, that where we stand as of now after so long in existence with HR best practices, globally standards we are applying, and then there are the two different standards which divide the entire process in two different directions. So, your thoughts on that, sir?
Okay, let me take the lead. See, there are two parts of it. One is conflict of interest. When you are doing dual employment, is there a conflict of interest? A guard who is doing 8 hours duty at place A and then doing 8 hour duty at place B is surely a conflict of interest, because at the place B he is going to sleep. And a person who is learning one tool from me and then going to another company in the evening to deploy that tool is also a conflict of interest, because it will take one thing from the other. At the same time, I am also saying that we should be training them on alternate, so that when they leave the company they should go and join that alternate employment. So that means when I had this tower technician, I cannot ask the tower technician to look for a job with my competitor company. For example, if I am maintaining Idea's towers and he start maintaining Airtel's tower in part time, I know he is going to replace my new battery from Vodafone tower with the old one from Airtel for a gain. So there is a conflict of interest. However, if he is selling insurances at home, that should be permitted. But but then it has to be very explicitly put in the appointment letter, so that person when joins knows what is the condition. Similar is in case of judges, and even in government servants it's no different. This the Netflix series called Khaki Bihar chapter, if you've heard of it. He has taken 49 lakhs from Netflix for that series in his wife's name. That person is now charged, that IPS officer is now charge sheeted. So government also works that way. Though that you have shared your experiences, you have not taken permission. He could have done it, but after taking permission from the government, that there is no conflict of interest. That there is always a case. So we can also make a policy like that, that they can do a business, but they should take a permission, and we should ensure there is no conflict of interest, and can work out a mid route in between that. Plus, our compliance system, even EPF is still not ready. They should also be ready. They should be changing the system so that two employers can also deposit PF in the EPF under same UN number. Such systems have also to be evolved. More so, moonlighting, if we look at it from the gig workers perspective, a gig worker is who is doing Zomato, Swiggy, and Uber Eats simultaneously, is earning simultaneously 10,000 each from each of the vendor, does not know who has to pay the PF, and practically can three companies cannot pay his PF because there is no software from the PF which allows it to be done. So there is a larger ecosystem which is emerging, which needs to be covered. Then I'll go still further. Our SEBI also says that moment, for example, I work closely with Vodafone, so every quarter end I get a mail that you are not to trade in the shares. There's internal. It's called internal trading. So see, we have to look at the conflict of interest is the word which we need to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Malik sir, any of your closing remarks before we say thanks to audience?
You can make out why I have Zoravar as my partner. He will pick up things where a normal person won't reach. and he has a very wide experience on service sector, and his comments are very, very valuable. I'll take up one particular point only. We talk about VRS. The public sector took up, you pointed out public sector, what is the difference and this and that. Where did the public sector was giving 45 days per annum worked? The law says 15 days per annum as retrenchment, and the public sector took up 45 days. Why? I'm talking about 2000 somewhere, BSNL and all that. They were paying 45 days wages per annum worked. Where did you get this 45 days figure? Astrologer, numerologist, or a financial calculation? Wrong. Let me tell you, I have studied IR and labor laws worldwide. The European standards say 45 days as retrenchment instead compensation instead of 15. Plus, the notice pay is not 1 month the way we do it. The notice pay is 6 months to 1 year, and beyond that, they get unemployment, the social security part from the government. The kind of protection people are getting social protection they are getting in Europe. You see, in Eastern Europe it's more, Western Europe it's less, but the benchmark 45 days has come from there. But I can talk about VRS, like innumerable in Faridabad. 45 is the lowest. I've seen 60 days, I've seen 90 days, I've seen 108 days, and I have seen 188 days plus. Again, I said, Suravars also pointed out that service sector, you need to be very careful on the analysis. The value chain analysis is very important. Similarly for VRS, what is the value, how it is to be calculated? This is a very close, it has secrecy sort of. Whenever I talk to a client, they say, please don't discuss it anywhere. These are wage levels, these are our tangibles, and this is where we are going to land up. This is the allowances we are giving, and this is the money we are going to do, and this is what we want to offer them. I know a company which says, no. Even if they are leaving, I must pay them 2.5 years of wages. Even if they are paying less, they say, no, give more. I've seen an MNC doing like that, which comes to, they even paid 150 days, 115. And I have seen 108 in innumerable companies. And Indian companies don't exceed 90. 60, 90, 60, 90. 45 is bare minimum, but 45 these days doesn't work. So I am trying to say that there is no thumb rule. Each company has its own survivability, technology, issues, which need to be analyzed. And what Zoravar pointed out, that today something may be, you see, okay, but tomorrow it may not be. But HR people are not trained to, the disengage. You're talking, one track mind, monochromatic. HR needs to come out with a different format. We need to think otherwise. That old format must go. HR is a very, very complex business today. So he has pointed out certain very, very important things in this respect. So that's it. We've tried to, in such a small we've tried to put in the best of our, give the best inputs. And of course, thanks to Zoravar, he filled up many gaps which I had left out because of paucity of time. His service sector was more important, he had pointed out. And of course, other things also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anupam
Thanks
sir.
to you.
I can see a few questions. Somebody is writing, we are in the process of hiring new employees and some of them are insisting not to deduct EPF. Is it legal? I don't think that. How can you? I don't know the size of their organization. And the question comes, we acquired a company where PF is not deducted for some employees. Can we start deducting PF from their salary now onwards? Yes, I think so. You should. Then before we close, may I request any other from the audience to, if you have any questions, and then otherwise we will say thanks to all. If you have any question, please raise your hands, and then, or you can write your questions.
Zoravar, you want to put in a thumb rule on PF?
Yes, let me answer that. There is the only single exemption which I think should not be exploited in terms of new labor codes. Let me tell you what the exemption is. Exemption is that if the person is joining very first time the job and has never been a member of EPF before, and is joining at a salary above 15,000, then he can exercise an option jointly not to deduct the PF, get the PF deducted. But it rarely happens. How will you know? Though PF has a system, you can put in Aadhaar and check whether he was previously member. Under the new codes, this has been done away with. So if you are doing it today, after a year, you have to actually do it. It will be much more pain, because then suddenly PF will say that you cannot deduct his part, your part from his salary, and you'll say, no, I have hired him on the CTC basis. Now I have to get it from his CTC. So it will get out of your control. So better is that if it is a social benefit and we are committed, and our human index of India is low because we are low on social security benefits, so let's do it. Let's not avoid. So as far as possible, please do PF at least on 15,000, beyond which is voluntary.
One more question comes, sir, maybe for your address. If an employee is found drunk or an influence of some narcotic or drug products during the duty hours, how to deal with situation? I think there is always process for the code of
Let me
conduct
put
at
it very,
workplace.
very strongly.
Yeah.
Put it very strongly. Discipline must be the core of working of any business. If somebody is into this is the poison of the society, not only the organization. We must come down heavily on this. And the case law supports the employer that if it is proved that he is drugged or he's drunk, he is a safety hazard. He is a danger to the organization and his co-fellows. The disciplinary procedure must be initiated against him, and should not be such conduct should not be tolerated in any manner.
Sir, what Mr. Malik has said, every management will say that to the HR, that this person should be thrown out next day. But please notice, if you have a standing order, there will be a process. It is like a mathematics. You have to follow all the steps in a process. You have to give a full due notice, give him opportunity to say, have an inquiry done, get an inquiry report, then throw. Not because you suddenly feel bad about it and you say tomorrow onward you are off. It will land you in a bad place. And if you don't have a standing orders, because if they are not applicable to you, please make them for your own use in advance, so that when they get applicable, you just do it. So let it be elaborate disciplinary procedure. And if your boss says throw him out tomorrow, you say, sir, this is a process. I'm suspending him immediately. We'll follow this process. After 3 months, we'll throw him out. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Repeat one thing. Sometimes we forget how to write a suspension order. So Zorawar said that. You see, file mota. I don't know how many of you, the audience, noted it. In HRIR, there is something called file moti karna. Somebody does something, issue a letter. It should be on record. And if somebody is doing it again and again, in the end, in the disciplinary procedure, let me tell you, there are two things. One is the important part of the conducting the inquiry. The second thing, if he is held guilty, the other part is the quantum of punishment. The quantum of punishment is like capital punishment for severance of service, throwing him out. You have to have a record. Your decision of dismissal will be upheld if you have a moti file at the back that this man has been doing actions or acts of indiscipline earlier also. File moti karna zaruri hai. He said, Zorawar has pointed out a very important thing which most of the people don't do it. And after conducting the inquiry, says, how about the quantum of punishment? Why you are dismissing? The court says, okay, life imprisonment, not hanging. Well, you could have done something less than termination. How will you justify it unless you have your record? So what Zorawar pointed out, that you must know how to write letters. It is a mistake he pointed out. You love somebody, tell them. You don't love somebody, tell them. Indiscipline, tell them. This was indiscipline.
I think, sir, to further to subsequently add a few things which practically may be possible. In one of the instance, I would just quote here for reference of HR community people those who are attending here. Though the dismissal could be in lines of what is required, of course, not in this context of narcotic drugs and all other, but I happen to have one a case wherein a junior employee who was quite on older in an organization for almost 8 9 years, uh, just to make the process faster, he had procured one stamp, right? To just make the invoice and expedite, because accounting process which was manual and too much delaying the process, and he did so. And where did he learn this thing? He learned from his seniors, which in case was happening in that system. Now what happens, sir? On fact finding, the new person joined as a senior. He was unaware what process is taking place, how the invoices are being generated and processed to the parties. And then the junior most was held responsible and dismissal was followed. When the senior came to know, then senior was also held responsible, assuming that he was not having the proper control on the junior or the system, which he was completely unaware of. So he was interrogated, he was questioned, he was made a lot of several meetings held. And then now this was the duty of this particular fellow who was so called senior to defend himself, because he was unaware. And the dismissal to the junior, which held made him in different position, because the junior was for 8 9 years more than himself experienced person in the department team. So then he had to do a lot of his efforts. And I think this is the case of HR people down the line in different departments, that they have to play, even if they are not in the position of the HR, but whichsoever the department they are handling, their immediate people, those who are doing something such sort of mischievous or unmischievous activity, they have to indulge and play the role of HR some ways. And then dismissal has to be taken back. So this organization took back the dismissal because the senior had to fight against his, just towards safeguard of his interest as well as the juniors. So these are the cases which actually happen. But file voting, yes, of course, is important.
We'll have a separate session on this,
Yes.
on indiscipline. Today, HR restructuring is more the strategic. HR restructuring is enough. I think somebody's asking about PF. Somebody's asking about PF.
Yes.
Zorawar?
If any company is not deducting PF of some of its employees, which is above PF limits, and then they do not have any PF account earlier, can this company deduct PF for those employees after 2 or 3 years of joining?
Voluntary.
Yes, they can. They have to file an option, joint option of deducting at a higher salary, 26(6) of PF rule.
Joint
They should
option.
file it. After filing a joint option, they can start. They have to just send a letter of intimation to PF office and start deducting. That they don't fall in a category. Now we want to voluntary deposit. Please allow, and wait. And from next month, start doing it.
Thank you very much, sir, to both of you, and thanks to lovely audience for being with us for so long. And I hope that this session would have been enriching, and will keep coming in future on other technical discussions around the subjects of interest to the industry. And you being member of ASSOCHAM, non-member, those who are attending this, thank you very much, audience. And for your questions, suggestions, recommendations, if you have anything with regard to this session, we would look back to you, and please write back to our email ID, maybe on santosh.parashar@socham.com. We will try to come back with the answers of the experts. Thank you very much. Joravar sir and Anupam Malik sir, we will just stay for a while here while the
Just a
audience
few
is
minutes.
just
You
awaiting.
switched off. You switched off the rest of the audience, right? Checked up.
I'm just waiting. People are just exiting.
Okay.